Welcome to the Daily Bolster. Each day we welcome transformational executives to share their real-world experiences and practical advice about scaling yourself, your team, and your business.
Hi, I'm Matt Blumberg. I'm co-founder and CEO of Bolster, and welcome to the Daily Bolster. Today is the view from the boardroom, and I want to introduce my guest, Jeff Epstein. Jeff is an operating partner at Bessemer Venture Partners. He's the former chief financial officer at Oracle. He's been on many boards, including, I think, Jeff, it's 8 years as an independent director and chair of the audit committee of my last company's board at ReturnPath. So Jeff, welcome to the Daily Bolster.
Hi, Matt. It's always wonderful to see you.
Good to see you. So I don't know if you have a running tally. How many boards have you been on?
25.
25. So you have been in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of board meetings.
Right.
And the question I have for you today is, what are your top 3 things that you try to do to add value in board meetings as an independent director?
Well, the way I think about the content of a board meeting is there's typically 3 elements. There's the compliance element, approving compensation, things like that, which is usually pretty quick. Then there's what I call the show and tell element, which is the company telling the board, this is what we've been doing, which helps the board get up to speed, but doesn't help management very much. And the third part, which I think is the most important, is decisions the CEO is thinking about, but has not yet made. And many boards spend a lot of time on the show and tell and only a little bit about the decisions. And that's not a good structure. It's much better to spend maybe 2/3 of the time on decisions I have not yet made, because then you give the board, to the extent that you've hired great board members and they have a perspective and they can help with strategy, the CEO will make the decision, but the board probably has a perspective that can be helpful, and perhaps the CEO will change his or her mind after listening to the board conversation.
I totally agree with the balance of time. So as an independent director, you try to steer toward more time on discussion.
Exactly. Discussion about decisions that have not yet been made.
Okay. That's a good first one. What's second?
Second is leadership. So we certainly at least once a year, but also often during other board meetings, we're talking to the CEO about each of their senior leaders, and sometimes a level down. And the question there is, where are we today? If the company's growing quickly, if you're growing from 100 employees to 500 employees over the next couple of years, are the people who are currently in seat the kind of people who have the experience and capability to take it to the next size? Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. And often the CEO who hired these people and is very loyal to them stays with them longer than he or she should. And the board is less emotionally attached. It's typically more objective. And so we ask questions and we say, well, maybe you should meet this candidate. For instance, if you've got a VP finance and at some point you want to hire a CFO, why don't I introduce you to some CFO candidates of companies of the scale you are going to be? And then you can compare the one you have and the one that you might have. And if you actually meet 2 different people, you say, oh yeah, this person actually knows a lot more, has a lot more experience, and much more capable. Now, the more junior person may grow into it. And the question is, well, how do we train them? How do we give them that experience? But sometimes you just have to get that experience by years in service and working at different companies. And so we are able as board to bring that outside perspective on the leadership team.
That's great. And it's outside, but also I love what you said, which is you're less emotionally attached.
Right.
So that's great. All right. And number 3.
Number 3 is balancing short-term and long-term priorities. Every organization has both. And the question is, which do you do when? If there's a crisis, you're focused only on the short term, putting out the fires. If you have plenty of capital and plenty of runway and business is great, you can focus more on the long term. And so that shifts from company to company and month to month and year to year. And that balance is something, again, where an outside perspective is often helpful to help the CEO think about the alternatives.
Those are 3 great things. So I'm going to give our audience a 4th, which is the favorite thing of mine that you consistently did on my board, which was not one of your top 3, but which I valued quite a bit. I thought you were particularly good at summarizing the back and forths of a very long board conversation. And I don't know if you intentionally played that role or not, but our board as all boards, when you're discussing one of those decisions the CEO has to make, would sometimes spend 20 minutes on something, 30 minutes on something, lots of different points of view, people changing their points of view. And I always found, Jeff, you were very helpful at coming to the end of the discussion, or driving the end of the discussion and saying, so what I'm hearing is, and kind of framing something up for us to move forward.
As I've gotten older, I've played that role more often. I think of it as the moderator role as opposed to the participant role.
That's
It's
right.
actually difficult to do that if you've just made a 5-minute speech about why we should choose option A. So if you really feel strongly about something, you're going to be a participant. If you're saying this isn't the most important decision in the world, but let's move on, then I generally wouldn't participate in the conversation. I would come in as the moderator, try to wrap it up and move on to something else, and make sure that each point of view is heard, and that the CEO typically feels that it's the CEO's authority to make the decision, as opposed to feel that they should be pressured to do something the board member wants that the CEO doesn't want.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Jeff, thank you for being on the Daily Bolster. A lot of our audience are founders who don't have a lot of experience running a board and using high octane independent board members. And a lot of our audience is independent board members. So thank you for sharing your wisdom today.
My pleasure.